Hello everybody. I would like to start by pointing out that it's an honor to have this opportunity to share the fruits of this research with colleagues. Our work is entitled Ideal Type of Sport, a Weberian Approach, and was prepared by me, Narayana van Amstel, together with my supervisor, Professor Dr. Vanderlei Marque Jr. We are from Federal University of Paraná in the south of Brazil. We are from CEPELS, Center of Research on Sport, Leisure and Society. I am a PhD student at Sociology. I am currently studying sport and religion connections on a Weberian perspective. My thesis is titled The Catholic Ethic and the Spirit of Olympism. I will talk a little bit about it later. So, without further ado, let's go to the introduction of this exposition. We begin by pointing out that 2020 marks the centenary of death of Max Weber, one of the fathers of sociology. His classic work provided fundamental social concepts to guide the field. Most were featured in Economy and Society. However, several studies mapping the field of sociology of sport shows that Weber theoretical concepts are not adopted by most researchers on the area. I think that probably happens because Weber didn't properly teach a sociology of sport. However, as we will show further, there were a few comments directed to sport by Weber in his books. And we thought that on the several concepts and theories created by Weber, there is one tool that could be very helpful for the sociology of sport, and it's the ideal type. You may ask, well, what is the ideal type? It's a theoretical representation, an heuristic tool built at the mental level, which abstracts characteristics considered essential from a social phenomenon. These essential characteristics obtained through observation and generalization by the researcher, going from particular cases, correspond to an intentionally exaggerated picture of reality, with a view to simplifying what would otherwise be complex. It should be noted that this sense of ideal in no way it corresponds to a notion of ought to be exemplary, but it's on being ideal in the logical sense. In other words, it's objectively possible. In a nomological sense, it does not make any judgment of value. In other words, it can be said that it's a purposeful generalization, schematizing the phenomenon, eliminating contradictions, and facilitating the visualization of the object of study from the perspective of the researcher. Thus, the ideal type does not intend to faithfully represent reality, but to facilitate the understanding of what is being analyzed. It reduces complexity. Okay? Well, we must understand why the ideal type was created. Weber believed that the central object of study of sociology was the social action, and that it should be explained by causes. Social action, in turn, would be the subjective actions of individuals with reference to other people. Weber, therefore, moves away from sociology concerned with social macrostructures and dedicates himself to understanding the meanings of individuals' actions and their causes. At the time when the ideal type was thought of, the natural science, they dominated the method of pure science. Weber wants to give a scientific character to the social science, and he believed that the ideal type would allow this path, although without adopting the same schemes as the natural science. With the ideal type, it would be possible to establish comparisons in historical and sociological study, schematizing complex phenomena and connecting them logically. Okay? Now we must understand why the ideal type could be useful. And Weberian ideal types have a high systematic value of expository nature by enabling the comparison and mediation of idealized constructs, comparing them with empirical data. With an epistemic pretension of low value, the ideal type never proposed to perfectly describe reality, but rather to facilitate its sharing and visualization by scientific peers. The ideal type would then be especially useful for the construction of hypotheses and their verifiability in social reality through the comparison of what is typical ideal projected by the researcher and what is present in the data. When they cross or they distance themselves, the sociologist will then have to explain the causalities. Okay? Well, now let's take a look at a few Weber statements close to an ideal type of sport in his book Economy and Society. We are using here the version of 7.8. Weber says, a social relationship will be referred to as a conflict insofar as action is oriented intentionally to carry out the actor's own will against the resistance of the other party or parties. The term peaceful conflict will be applied to cases in which actual physical violence is not employed. A peaceful conflict is competition insofar as it consists in a formally peaceful attempt to attain control over opportunities and advantages which are also desired by others. A competitive process is regulated competition to the extent that its ends and means are oriented to one another. Well, he continues. There are all manner of continuous transitions, ranging from the bloody type of conflict, which, setting aside all rules, aims at the destruction of the adversary, to the case of the battles of medieval cavalry, bound as they were to the strictest conventions and to the strict regulations imposed on sport by the rule of the game. The conceptual separation of peaceful from violent conflicts, justified by the quality of the means normal to it and the peculiar sociological context of its occurrence. Well, as we can see, Weber, he situates competitions and conflicts as important categories for sociological analysis. And we have a specific article that dealt with all the other passages by Weber related to sport in his work Economy and Society. But now we want to focus on an author who appropriated the Weberian repertoire. So, we will note that Professor Alan Gutman is the author of the classic From Ritual to Record. I believe that everyone already heard about it. This book is very close to Max Weber's perspective because he places sports on a fine line between competition and conflict, between seriousness and fun. And in his work, Gutman presents a comprehensive scheme that comprises playing, games, disputes. For Gutman, an ideal type of sport is a non-utilitarian contest which include an important mastery of physical as well as intellectual skill. And we can see here that the sports, they are between games and between even wars or legal proceedings. So it's this kind of contest. He differs spontaneous plays from organized play, considered games. In turn, certain games may or may not have a competitive purpose. Competitive games are contests. And within the disputes, we note that they can be physical or mental. And the physical will be exactly what we understand by sport in its ideal type. It is noted, we can see here, that chess, for example, although it may be recognized as a sport, it enters this ideal typical model as being an intellectual dispute. Okay? Well, here's the most important thing. Here then it's worth noting that Gutmann works is operating with the theory of Weberian rationalization as central. So he points out that sport in its modern format is distinguished from all other sport practice of other times. He presents 7 typical characteristics that cannot be fully united and coherent in past ages. So these characteristics are secularism, equality, specialization, rationalization, bureaucracy, quantification, and records. This can only be found, the 7 characteristics can only be found at modern sports. And he showed, through his book, he showed that primitive sports, Greek sports, Roman sports, medieval sports. He also has a book about Japanese sports. And he shows that despite this other practice, they show a few characteristics sometimes of the 7 characteristics. They don't compromise all the 7. Only modern sports have the 7 characteristics. In this sense, Gutmann is very close to Weber reasoning in economy and society. When the German sociologist demonstrates that institutions such as state, democracy, educational systems, all of these things always existed in the past in some form, but only in modernity are they inserted in a rational, bureaucratic, and a secular form. Okay? Well, another example of application of the ideal type of sport as an hypothesis appears in my thesis, The Catholic Ethic and the Spirit of Olympism, which we will finish probably at the end of this year. Comparing the ideal type of modern sport, here emphasizing its secularization characteristics, we notice severe approach of the Catholic Church with Olympism. If the secularization of sport is seen as something to be watched, guaranteed, fiscalized, so that the central purpose of modern competition is not lost, it must be assumed that there are attempts of counter-secularization. In other words, we are saying here that where there is power, it may be possible to find resistance to this power. Okay? It seems to us that in an opposite direction to the secularization of sport, the Catholic Church encourages its faithful to have a close relationship with the world of sport, evangelizing through the example of virtues and combating the vices common to sport. Alright? So, we think that there are some kinds of resistance to secularization of modern sport because the meaning of the social action of sport to each people and its connection with the sacred, they are obtained from their perception of individuals, how they connect with religion with their sport practice, how they feel that the sport practice is making them more close to God, for example, right? So we have on here a few examples. For instance, Neymar, when he used this bandage, 100% Jesus. We have Pope John Paul II. He always talk a lot about sports and its importance to the education of the youth. All right. So yeah. I think for today that would be what we have to show. We appreciate everyone's attention and we are willing to answer any questions. We accept suggestions. You also will leave here a QR code for the expanded version of the survey. It's a work already published here in Brazil. Unfortunately, it's in Portuguese, but we believe that Those interested can try translating digitally. Here are some of our reference, okay? And thank you, everybody. Thank you.